Dear Uncle William and Aunt Paulina, I regret that I am unable to be present with you on the celebration of your 50th wedding anniversary. It's as if your wedding took place yesterday. The ceremony took place in East Walton. It was winter and your wedding party arrived in sleighs. Over 30 sleighs gathered outside. The Reverend's marriage ceremony was both long and impressive. You said he kept you on the floor, standing before him for at least an hour and a half. I remember the fast ride from East Walton to Minesville for the reception. You rode that celebrated fast horse, owned by John Cameron. It was hard for the others to keep up. You arrived in Minesville at your sister's home down by the shore for a marvelous supper. Then there was dancing of the old-fashioned reels, step danced to by Robert and Amy. I also remember the boxing match the next morning before breakfast in the washroom between yourself, Uncle, and your good friend, Captain Joe Blois of Maitland, then a young man. So now I congratulate you both, and may God's hand and peace be upon you. Your nephew, Henniger White. January 27, 1925. William arrived at the supply store in Knoll, the community next to Minesville, looking for the store's owner, Osman OBrien. William nodded politely to Austin, one of Osman's sons, who was standing in the doorway of the store. Word had been received that Osman wanted to meet with William. The two men were well acquainted, as William often skippered Osman's vessels. Although still in his 30s, William had traveled to ports throughout the world. He had a reputation for speed. He raced horses and pushed his crews to set speed records on ocean voyages. Earlier that year, blown by the trade winds of March, William had sailed one of Osman's barks called the Piscataqua from Montevideo, Uruguay, to Boston in record time, 45 days. Osmond, 20 years older than William, ran a family firm known as Osman OBrien and Company. He was assisted by his sons. Osmond had founded the firm in 1856, and the firm prospered. It was reputed to be one of the most enterprising firms in the county and one of the wealthiest. William found Osmond among a small group that were standing beneath the bow of a mammoth vessel created in the O'Brien shipyard. The two men initially made small talk, with Osmond ribbing William about past sailing adventures. Osmond reminded William of the summer past, when he had grounded the Piscataqua, weighted down with coal on a reef not far from Pictou. 2 tugs were required, but their efforts were resisted until the skipper had given the order to dump the cargo, Osmond's cargo. Moving on to the business of the day, Osmond turned his attention to the behemoths vessel behind him. The vessel was a bark called the Amanda, and it was the largest ever built at the shipyard, stretching 184 feet. The Amanda needed a skipper for its maiden voyage to the Mediterranean. Osmond offered the position to the skipper. His offer was accepted. On launch day, the skipper was at the helm of the Amanda as it was eased into the Knoll Creek, with much fanfare and pageantry. Important dignitaries gave speeches, as crowds of over 1,000 watched. William's first mate for the maiden voyage was his cousin and close friend, Joe Blois. The blue-rimmed flag that marked the O'Brien fleet was proudly unfurled from the center mast, while the Union Jack flew from the mast nearest the stern. The vessel readied itself for Mediterranean seas. In the years following the launch, only one ship's portrait, a portrait of the Amanda, hung in the skipper's home. The skipper had commissioned the painting from the famed Italian painter Anthony Luzzo in 1883, and it hung in the skipper's dining room for 46 years. A daily reminder of successful voyages past. Under foreboding skies, William, now a retired sea captain, stood on the shoreline near his home in Minesville. The captain gazed intently out to sea as he had done many times past. On this occasion, his eyes were fixed on a small schooner that was breaking the western horizon. The schooner, called the Only Son, was owned by the captain and operated by two of his sons. His sons, on this day, were returning from Windsor, having discharged a cargo of lumber at a new plaster mill. As the captain watched the schooner make its way under December skies, storm clouds gathered. As the sky darkened, the captain reflected on times past when world travels required he round the Cape in South America. No stretch of water was more treacherous. He made the voyage 25 times. During these voyages, he drove his vessels through hurricanes, gales, and sea squalls. Not a vessel was lost. On one occasion, as he rounded the Cape, the captain found himself in a gale that lasted for 6 days. During the gale, the bark he was skippering was blown over on its side so that its sails dragged in the water. It came dangerously close to grounding itself on rocky shoals that guard the coast. Years later, the captain said it gave him cold shivers to recall the incident. Back on the Minesville shoreline, the captain watched his sons and noticed the storm had intensified as wind lashed his face and salt spray stung his eyes. He knew his sons were in danger. The schooner was floundering. With alarm, he watched as the vessel was driven off course and crashed into the rocks off Burnt Coat Head. The schooner was dashed to pieces. Only the cabin was left intact. The captain, assisted by his two sons, who had escaped the wreck without injury, hauled the cabin back to the family farm, where it was used as a chicken house.